G'day and welcome back to Look Who's Watching. Joining me today are my co-hosts Bro Savard and Isabella Vallette, and I am Harry J. Wall. And today I'm going to be taking you through a review of Wonder Woman 1984, released on December 25th, 2020 on streaming services and in cinema as part of the Warner Bros. HBO Max package deal, which has made this movie very easy for a lot of the world to see. It's the follow-up to, I believe it was 2017's Wonder Woman. Once again, we have Patty Jenkins returning to direct, and we have Gal Gadot returning to star. Now, I did not like the first Wonder Woman, and I am the minority opinion in this case.
Yeah, right.
But it set me up for my expectations for the second one, because when everyone else was getting disappointed by the second one, I was like,
this is quite a shock! On the other hand, it's not surprising in the least.
Wonder Woman 1984 sees Gal Gadot return as Wonder Woman in the year 1984.
Really?
She's fighting the Mandalorian and one of the female Ghostbusters and a bunch of outdated stereotypes about Middle Eastern people.
I don't think the Middle Eastern thing's as bad as you're saying. I think it's interesting because it investigates or it discusses a part of Egyptian history that isn't familiar to audiences and that is a little bit different. There is that kind of tension in Egypt between what is historically a royal type family, which have now become very wealthy, versus a version of democratic government. I quite like that idea that it's being discussed. I think it's a different way of using Egypt as opposed to just having Middle East, oil baron, lots of money, lots of murder. It kind of had a little bit of a subtext to it that I really enjoyed, that I thought was quite different to what I expect from
I agree with that, Bros.
Action film.
What I like about Wonder Woman and Wonder Woman 1984 is that they do have kind of historically accurate allusions. The way that, you know, they're in the 80s and they sort of talk about that Egyptian thing, and they also mention the Cuban Missile Crisis, they mention the Cold War with Russia. It's kind of, they talk about the actions of the characters affecting real-world historic events with a kind of motivation behind it, which is affecting the drama, which I think is kind of cool.
Yeah. That runtime, that was just, that was awful.
It was maybe 30 minutes spent of watching her fly in clouds.
So much of that.
Why so much flying time? Like, what's the demographic that wants to see the flying time?
I don't know, but it's a bloody good question.
After the whole stereotypical intro brief action scene, there is about 80 minutes before the first major action scene in the film. By the time we had gotten there, I was so bored with this movie. I looked at that 80-minute running time and said to myself, I could have watched Showdown in Little Tokyo, or I could have watched The Master of Disguise during this entire time, and I would have enjoyed either of those more. One scene from Wonder Woman 1984, which has erupted into a series of memes in DC-themed shitposting groups, is the scene where the Israeli Gal Gadot rescues Middle Eastern children from an attack. Now, a lot of people have been commenting on this because Gal Gadot is a very controversial figure in Middle Eastern countries due to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. And people have made that exact scene, the cornerstone of a lot of pretty heavy-handed jokes. Now, I don't want to delve into that too much because that's a very dense political discussion, but that's not the only reason this film has been controversial. A lot of people have talked about the fact that one of the themes in the film is that characters' wishes start coming true. And she wishes that Steve Trevor, who passed away in Wonder Woman, is brought back. He's brought back through possessing an existing man's body. People have talked about the fact that the two characters engage in coitus. People have been quick to point out that she's sleeping with a man whose body isn't actually his, and that man can't actually consent to what's happened.
And at the end, when she like sees him in the market, I could not stop thinking he was like, oh, hey, how are you? Like, Merry Christmas. She was just looking at me and being like, I fucked you. Like, it was so weird.
And I think that whole storyline is weird. The whole thing's fictional, right? So just invent another way for Steve Trevor to come back. I don't know if people remember the 70s TV show jumped in season 1 and season 2 from World War II to the 1970s. And what they did to keep Steve Trevor alive was she met his son, who looked identical to Steve Trevor, exactly the same actor, and then carried on the relationship there. Like, just make something up. And I get that the inhabiting of the body thing ties into the wish and the end of the film and all that stuff. But again, it's fiction. Just make something up.
I personally felt like 1984 was an improvement over Wonder Woman. Now, when I initially saw Wonder Woman, I was disappointed. Everyone overhyped it. I didn't like the CGI. The villain was terrible. The acts were very segmented. That last act was a massive CGI overload. One thing I liked about this one, the villains were better. There was an overload of characters. I thought Pedro Pascal was great. He gave a very emotionally powerhouse performance.
He was stunning.
He was great.
awesome.
Blew my mind.
He's a very talented actor. I mean, he's done Mandalorian, Game of Thrones, and Kristen Wiig, she was spectacular.
She was so good. Return to form for her, and perfect balance of the comedic with the dramatic. There were genuine laugh out loud moments for her, but then the character had a lot of depth. Well, that's one of the things I liked, is that she got some genuine comic moments that reminded me of the work she did on Saturday Night Live. So there's that scene where she's very awkward and kind of pulling, and it's a direct reference to a character, Sue, that she used to do on SNL, who couldn't keep a secret or hold a surprise.
I'm sorry, I'm going to have to disagree here.
You don't think so?
I think Kristen Wiig was the worst part of this
Oh,
film.
really?
I love Kristen Wiig. I think
love
she's
her.
so funny. I think she gave a great performance, but I think the character was terribly written. She was so stereotypically like nerdy woman, but like she actually seemed to have a kind of good life. Like she got this job recently. She was extremely intellectual, understood gemstones. She was creating this great friendship with like the hottest, coolest woman in the world. Like things were going kind of fine. Her only issue was that she had a lack of confidence, wore a big pink dress, and her crushes didn't notice her.
Well, no one noticed her. None of her colleagues noticed her.
Yeah, sure. But, you know, like she could have just put on those clothes without that wish and they would have noticed her, you know? And so she just got stronger. She went to the gym, got like super physically aggressive, kind of stopped giving a homeless man his lunch.
Yeah, when's lunch?
The next time we see her, she just inexplicably is like, no, I want to stay cool and be powerful.
The idea is that her character loses her humanity and that she's a very humane person. And it's not necessarily clear that that's what the evolution is. And I agree. I think
It's
at the
very
end of the day-
hasty. I think the more interesting development of that character would have been if that was a major conflict between Diana and her. It
Yes.
felt like they just kind of kicked the shit out of each other, and Diana was just always the good guy being like, no, you're doing this wrong, this is the wrong way. But what would have been more interesting would have been to see Diana perhaps being more threatened by this woman because it was like another version of her and like some kind of competitive element. I feel like they were afraid to go there because they didn't want female competition perhaps and to be criticised by that. But we don't even see her getting turned into a cat. She suddenly comes out as this like anthropomorphic cat, like at the end for no reason when she'd already kicked the shit out of Diana successfully.
The anthropomorphic cat thing, I think, is more fan service for comic book fans.
Because Cheetah is the character.
I know. I found that out later, but it was just so random for me.
makes sense, yeah.
Like it was like such an on-the-nose performance. She was like walking around, like walking sexy in like boots, and like being like, I want to be the hottest, most powerful bitch around. And then she comes out as like this weird cat.
There were similarities between her and, I would say, Michelle Pfeiffer's characterization of Catwoman in Batman Returns. That kind of transition, how she's a woman held down by a patriarchal structure who gets pushed over the edge and then, you know, embraces a more animalistic side and, you know, develops a new degree of power. One thing I did like about Wonder Woman 1984 with the character Cheetah was the film wasn't aggressive about characterizing Cheetah as being a result of like the negative influence of like patriarchal impacts on the world. In her position in the corporation, she, you know, couldn't speak up as much as her male counterparts. She was pushed around by men on the street, and she progressively fought back and became more aggressive as a result. She was pushed over the edge by patriarchy and then began to embrace the more aggressive masculine stereotype, you know, started using violence as a resolution for everything. Now, the film didn't shout this in your face. It was subtle about it. It used more of a show, don't tell dynamic, which I liked. You know, it used feminism and politics in the narrative without making that the hook.
That's how it's done.
Warner Brothers, who are making the DC films, I feel the problem is they have a template.
Yeah.
They have a template, and this is how all action films will be. And I feel like it's probably gone back longer than this, but the Harry Potter films and then the DC Universe films, it's got to start with an action sequence, and 20 minutes in another action sequence. It's got to finish with a CGI action explosion.
Yeah.
And from listening to Patty Jenkins interviewed, that first film, that horrible finale in that film was foisted upon her with about 6 weeks of shooting to go.
Really?
And she's not happy with any of the CGI. She's happy with it from a narrative perspective, but she wanted it to look different. But I feel like that's the Warner Brothers way. And at least in this film, the ending was a little bit more true to the Wonder Woman character from the comic books. There's a nice fight towards the end, but the Max Lord storyline doesn't finish with a big CGI monstrosity. And they could have easily have justified him becoming some type of CGI monster and fighting Wonder Woman, but thank God they didn't do that, because that's what Warner Brothers do. At the end of Justice League, that Steppenwolf fight there is horrible. It's the worst CGI I've seen for like 20 years. It's such a horrible sequence. But same kind of thing. Warner Brothers just want to finish CGI monster fight. That's what we finished with. That's a 2.5 hour film. There should be a lot more time invested in character.
Yeah, I thought it was a step up. I liked the characters more. I thought the special effects were way better than they were in the first Wonder Woman, and there was definitely more attention towards the characters. They tried to take the time to characterize Cheetah, even if they didn't get it perfect. They took a lot of time to characterize Pedro Pascal's character and gave him a lot of time to give an incredible performance. He was the highlight
He
for
blew
me.
me away. He was just extraordinary. And I hadn't seen Mandalorian when I saw Wonder Woman 84. I've since watched all of Mandalorian.
Nice.
Yeah,
I've caught up. It's okay.
I need to catch up.
Yes, you do.
But he blew blew my mind because I've seen him in Narcos, but I didn't associate him with his character from Narcos.
Yeah.
And I
He
haven't
looks
seen
really
Game of Thrones.
different, doesn't he?
Yeah.
He's just very like a chameleon.
He is a chameleon. He's
Yeah.
a real actor. He's great. Yeah.
Yeah. But I had to say, I don't like Gal Gadot as Wonder Woman. I just think she's flat.
I'm flat!
When I watched the first Wonder Woman, I didn't see Diana Prince transitioning into Wonder Woman as strong development at all. I don't think they've written her well at all. I think she's just kind of a blank superhero character. So I don't want to place that blame entirely on Gal Gadot. That being said, I don't feel like she has her own inherent charm that she brings to the role to elevate it to the point where I can say, yes, I like you in the
I
role.
feel like she was written to be a bit more cold and cool and aloof in this film, though.
She's gone through her emotional trouble. She's facing more stuff. And yeah, she's trying to come to terms with everything that's going on, trying to protect the world and look out for her own priorities and all that. So she does have a lot going on. You're right. The characterization is a big factor in it.
I really like her.
Yeah, I like her. I find her very charismatic.
I think I think she's got a real sense of, I think especially in the first one, what really came out was this huge, sense of warmth and hope and love in the first one. I think in this one, she's definitely meant to be more cool and cold and then kind of only pep up when she's there with her boyfriend. And I thought it was really, I think she when she has to, she brings a very strong emotional connectivity to her performance. Like when she made that final speech at the end to everyone and transmitted it, even when Cheetah, or anthropomorphic Cheetah character, in the scene where she is beating up Diana in the White House, and she does that speech to Kristen Wiig where she's like, "You're lost your humanity." I thought she was really good.
Yeah.
I think she brings it when she has to.
What did you think of Chris Pine?
I forgot he was even in it, honestly.
Yeah, right.
Chris Pine did exactly what he was meant to do. He was meant to be an ally for her to sort of bounce off and talk to, and I actually think that he underplayed it to the point where some actors can't do that with their ego because they're trying to make their performances pop. He was just exactly what he needed to be, middle of the line,
Playing
there
support.
for her. Yeah, he was supportive.
Yeah, I like Chris Pine as an actor. I think he's got a very nice charm to him, very handsome fella. But I feel like the degree of characterization they gave him is like the degree of characterization you give to what is an obligatory romantic subplot. He's just there and in a role that would stereotypically be more often played by a female character, like Rachel McAdams in Doctor Strange, just there to be the partner. Obviously, he does contribute something to the story because he helped shape Wonder Woman as a character.
He's got like a real kink for being a kamikaze. Like obviously that's how the first one ended. Like he was like, I'm gonna save the day, and like, you know, he kills himself to save the day. He did that, and then like there's like 5 different moments in this film where he like explores the possibility of doing it again. And ultimately does. He's like, you've gotta undo the wish. Like he's so into it. He really wants to like kamikaze for her.
Suicide is badass!
We've seen a lot of female-led narratives coming out in recent years. So Captain Marvel, the new Star Wars trilogy, and the Wonder Woman films.
Black Widow's imminent.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to that one.
really looking
I will say, I didn't like either Wonder Woman's. I wasn't a fan of Captain Marvel, and I didn't like the way that Rey as a character was characterized in the new Star Wars films.
Yeah,
You know,
she just runs in dunes.
Exactly.
Why are you running? Why are you running?
One thing that I am really happy about is that these films are getting made, and that particularly young female audiences can look up and see strong female characters on the screen. You know, they won't be as picky as I am. They'll look up and they'll just see, I want to identify with this character, I can.
I want to become a giant cat.
Exactly. We're seeing female superheroes, female supervillains. It is saying that there's a platform for female filmmakers, for female superheroes, for female supervillains, all that. And
Well,
that's really
it's nice
important.
because the myth in Hollywood has been female-led superhero films don't make money. Well, they do if you make them well.
Yeah.
Like if you make Catwoman and you make Barbed Wire, yeah, of course they're not going to do well because they're cheap pieces of crap with nothing going on.
Yeah.
Whereas, you get a powerful director and a powerful star and you put them in a big film and market it properly, then you've got some real opportunity there. So let's keep doing it.
I will say, I do like Patty Jenkins' directorial work on the films. I think the scripts are where it faltered and the decisions made by Warner Brothers, that's where it falls apart for me. But I like her work. I like that she's consistently getting that work. Even if I'm not personally enjoying them myself, I'm happy they're getting made. So my score for Wonder Woman 1984, I'd give it a 2 out of 5. You know, I'd give the first one 1 out of 5 because it was such a letdown for me.
Whoa.
2 was a step up. I'm more optimistic about seeing the third Wonder Woman. I don't think I'll like it, but I'll see it, and I'll support the filmmakers' endeavours for getting it made. You know?
Yeah, for me, it's a 3.5 out of 5. I thought the first one was a 4. It's a solid film. Loses a star because that ending is horrible.
Yep.
This one, after about half an hour into the film, I'm like, oh, this kind of reminds me of the 70s TV series, detective work, and it's got nice little vignette moments and some action sequences. So it's more like, 5 episodes of a TV show than one film, perhaps, with the continuing narrative. And so I really enjoyed it. 3.5.
Okay, Isabella?
I reckon maybe 2.5, and that sounds harsher than I mean it. You know, like it's actually better than I thought. 2.5 is half of 5.
Yeah.
You know, like it was like halfway there. Yeah, that's it.
Alrighty, so we can wrap it up there. If you want to see Brose's review of Soul, be sure to stick around here. Or if you want to see Isabella's review of the Australian film The Dry, you can also catch it right here. Until next time, I've been Harry J. Wall. This is Look Who's Watching. Thank you for joining us.